Everybody, let's get started. Welcome back. What do you guys? You guys are engineering managers. That's what you guys are. Engineering management. All right. So today is the lecture on the strategic planning and strategic competitive advantages and strategic information systems and information technology that is related to engineering management. All right, so for those of you who are looking for this lecture is in the first, it's actually the second one of the technology management, not the innovations, but the technology management one. So this one is this one right here, lecture number 2. If you're looking for it, some people like to look for it, or some people like it because then they can follow along with the slide set. Because I zip through and I don't usually read what's on the slide, so it's really hard to see it. But it's number 2. Hello, on the technology management lectures section. Questions, comments, or concerns before we get started? I hear a lot of talking. Okay, good. Now the talking's over with, so we can start. I'm going to skip to about slide number 17 because I don't like the beginning slides. No, it's because we've already covered all that stuff. I'm just going to. And this slide's at 71 slides long, and I sort of want to get through it today. So we're skipping to slide number 17 to start out with. Well, let me go back actually to the beginning. I'll go back up just so I can tell you where this is coming from. This lecture set is chapter 2 out of Competing with Technology. Really good book by James A. O'Brien and George Maracas, if I'm saying that correctly. And slide number 2 here also has the ISBN number of this book. As I previously mentioned, most of these lectures are coming out of about 6 or 7 different textbooks. This is one of them. And this is the one that gets into Potter's 5 competitive forces and all of the competition-related things in terms of technology and the use of information systems management and technology, essentially, which is all about the concept of engineering management. There's only about 1 or 2 engineering management books on the shelves these days. Not too many, actually, which is kind of weird. Well, the topic area is kind of broad, which is probably why you can't just stick everything all in one book. So, all right, so that's slide number 2 is where you're going to get the reference for this lecture. So some of it is generic stuff that you're probably going to end up with in other classes as well, because there is definitely a bit of a overlap between this class and a lot of other ones. All right, so strategic information systems, my topic for today, and by definition, it's any type or any kind of information system that uses information technology to help an organization gain a competitive advantage or reduce competitive competition, reduce a disadvantage, or meet the strategic enterprise objectives that might exist. All right, so why even study engineering management to begin with? Because you want to be better managers, and hopefully. And you're managing in an engineering environment. So what's engineering? It's all about technology. Depends on what type of technology. So some of it's software, hardware, electrical. There's different variations and different categories of engineering to begin with. But all of them have pretty much the same goal as any other company out there. Make money, reduce costs, conquer the world, world peace or whatever. I don't know what the other goals are. But generally they're not to fail, hopefully. Although there are some businesses that are in business to fail, but we'll say that one for a different lecture entirely. So the mission and the competitive strategies is what we're looking at. So in some cases, the corporation is not a for-profit corporation, and it does have a mission, and it's really just in business to keep on that mission. That's kind of a rare case these days. Most of us are in business to make money. And that's the mission, but it's not always the mission. Sometimes it's to be green, In fact, ITU is on a couple of different missions. We're not a for-profit. We're a non-profit, and we have a green initiative, and we have a couple of other interesting initiatives that a lot of people don't even know about, which is kind of interesting. But for the most part, the goal or the mission of the organization is what the management staff is supposed to be supporting and ensuring and making sure happens. So it's all focused on the mission. So corporate mission or objective is the focus. And then the competitive strategy. This is definitely a competitive world in the for-profit category, not talking about non-profits now, talking about for-profit. It's everybody for himself. Nobody's going to work together. Most companies are, against each other. So there's major policies to support the company to compete. So the competitive strategy is different from the corporate mission or from the corporate objective. So there's competition with other companies so you can survive in the long run, which is really just how companies end up surviving. There used to be an old statistic, I think it's a little bit outdated now, but the stat read something like if your business was in business and you made a profit after 5 years, then you're going to last 20 years. So now I take it, it's probably less than 5 years. You got to survive for like maybe 1 year, and then maybe you're successful. Who knows? So it used to take 5 years, but as things have become more competitive, things have become less competitive at the same time, which is kind of interesting. I'll talk about what I mean by that in a few minutes, but we're looking at the competitive forces, and what I'm going to do is kind of scroll ahead to a better slide and then come back to this slide in a few minutes because I want to discuss the competitive forces. And some people may have gotten this before, but this is Potter's competitive forces. So the guy's last name was Porter, excuse me if I say this right. And the model is a strict, it's kind of your modern day management model that says this is the reality of it. These are the 5 competitive forces that we're working with. And the 5 forces are actually in this slide set here, competitive forces and then the strategies that work with it. So if we look at the bottom line over here, these are the 5 in the model. Well, these are the competitive forces: rivalries from competitors, threats of new entrants into the market, threat of substitutes in the market, bargaining power for customers, bargaining power for suppliers. So these are all things that are working sort of against each other. If you look at this model, these are going in an upward position and then these are going in a sideways horizontal position. They're overlapping and crossing each other. So it's not a, if you have this, you're going to have that. All of them are working at the same time. And they're all forces that are going to determine how successful you are. And this is basically for technology-oriented companies or engineering companies that either have a product or have a service or have something in the market. And these might be also considered counterproductive or counter-competitive or counter-success. You know, think of it that way. So the competitive strategies on the left-hand side of the grid right here, these are the different strategies I'm going to talk about today in relationship with the 5 components of Porter's model, which is pretty de facto standard these days when it comes to competition in a company. And engineering management in general deals with all of these factors, and it deals with trying to combat competition and work, essentially to accomplish the goal or the mission of the organization. So the strategies here, we're looking at the cost of leadership, the differentiation of your company with the other companies, the innovation, as I was talking about last time, and globalization, as I talked about last time, kind of fit into an interesting category these days, as well as growth and alliance as well. So those are some of the factors. So imagine this grid as I go through the material, and you'll sort of hopefully be able to put all the pieces together in terms of the competing forces against each other. So there are competing or competitive forces by definition. They shape the structure of the competition in the industry. Now, it would be perfect if you were the only one who produced a network card, or if you were the only one who had a cloud service, or if you were the only one that came out with a thumb drive, or anything. That would be the perfect world. That's not really the case these days, though. So what we're talking about today is competition. And as an engineering manager, if you fail to realize the competitive nature of your business, you're not going to be in business for too long because somebody else is going to come out with a better product that's 2 cents cheaper, and they're going to put you out of business. So, or perhaps maybe something that is better, lasts longer, better battery life. If you want to think about this in perspective, you have no engineering background at all, and you have no management background at all, then in the back of your head, think about the cell phone industry and what's been going on with that. Prime example. We have got Android versus iOS versus BlackBerry. We got the tablet introduction. We have all the competition that goes in between all that. That's a great example of this information and how these factors have played in. And I'm going to hopefully bring in some, if I can remember to do it, bring in some examples related to that. But Potter's competitive forces model: to survive, to succeed, to do anything, a business must develop and implement strategies to effectively counter what? Well, okay, so here's an explanation of the 5 factors. We have the rivalry, I can't say that word, of competitors within the industry. There's more than one cell phone manufacturer out there. Actually, there's a couple of hardware manufacturers, there's a lot of service providers, but there's different options. HTC, Motorola, Samsung. We got big players in this game with a lot of money. It's not a matter of throwing a lot of money out there for the consumer. It doesn't really matter how much you spend on that product. It doesn't matter how much quality is in that product either. It's nothing about the product. It's the competitive advantages that they're having. So it's kind of interesting. The threat of new entrants into the industry and its markets. Yeah. We've got every day a new something coming out of it. Not only that, but we have new features coming out, which is interesting as well. There's a constant threat that someone's going to come out and produce a better Galaxy. And then if you think about the concept, actually, why do we have a Galaxy 2, a Galaxy 3, a Galaxy 3S, a Galaxy, and then we have the iPhone, I don't know what we're up to now, 5 or 6 or something. And I teach this stuff. I can't keep up with it. It's like iPhone version 4, 5, 6. There's a 6 out, actually. There's iOS 6. There's a prototype out of the next one. The last one hasn't even made it to most consumer markets, and the next one is already prototyped. It's already available. So it's like, what? Why did they use so many? Actually, I think they're going too fast, actually, but we'll see. It just seems like Apple keeps putting out more and more and more, like too quickly. They used to wait a little bit in between product releases, but I guess you can't wait anymore. All right, yeah?
Would that affect even Apple competing with each other, with itself?
Actually, Apple doesn't really compete with itself. It's got an interesting, in fact, I gotta find it. There's a documentary on the management. So that's a great example of engineering management right there, actually. They have, so they've done a recent study, they've done a lot of studies, but in the past they found out the rate in which a consumer will upgrade. And what they're doing is keeping their product, they're keeping their customer base. So if I were to take this, there's like a 2-hour documentary on this, but if I were to take it and sum it up, I have to find a link for you so you guys can watch this thing, but it's like 30 to 35% effort in their total strategy to maintain their current market share. So the strategy is to maintain the market share, which means keep introducing new products that are the same company's products. So they're retaining the customer base, but yet they're giving them new stuff. Because there's an average turnover on how often the average iPod or iPhone consumer will upgrade. Same thing with computers. I believe the average was 1.5 years. If you keep it longer than 1.5 years, they're going to switch or something of that nature. There's like a higher likelihood of them switching products. So if they're going to switch products, they should switch within the same branch, within the same company. So the more introduction that they can do, so the more innovation that they can preach to their own audience, the longer they'll retain that audience, and they want to hold on to it is what they're doing. So they're afraid for them to leave. Because when you leave, you're not coming back. Or if you do come back, it's a harder comeback. It's harder to sell you a product if you come back. So their whole strategy is on customer retention. And they did a study that said there's a certain point where the average consumer, I guess, owns 3. You'll own 3 devices simultaneously of the same product. So you'll have 3 iPods, 3 iPhones or something. And then after 3, you won't do it. There's like a cap. So for the longest time they were trying to do the strategy of buying back your old products, which they did through like the first generation of the MacBooks that came out. So you were done with your computer after your 1.5 years average, and then you were to sell it back to Apple, and then you'd buy another Apple product because you get a discount on the next Apple. So customer loyalty, retention, that's what they're trying to do essentially. Well, from this documentary. The documentary also goes into about 20 other different concepts as well. That's an entire 2-hour lecture in itself. But I'm going to try and find a link for you guys because I think it'd be interesting to watch. Maybe I'll even show it here if I can figure out how to do it. So it's really interesting because you look at it and go, why did they decide to do that? Well, it had something to do with their competition, obviously, but it also has something to do with them as a company and how innovative they are and stuff like that. So, and then they send their engineers to design school. You know, who sends their engineers to graphic design? So, well, their industrial design is their core competency. So everybody has to be trained on graphic and industrial techniques. So you can't just get somebody off the street, you know, the average level of design skill. So.
That's with the iPhone 4 and 4S too, right? They brought out
Yeah.
iPhone 4 and then there was Samsung Galaxy and then they again brought out 4S.
Because the Galaxy was very similar. In fact, if you remember the lawsuit, it was very similar to the current, and they have to be one up. So they have to release the new one, and then have to release the new one. They have a new one coming out with a bigger processor, longer battery life.
I think it's transparent too, right?
Huh?
It's the iPhone 6. I believe it's transparent too. Like you can look into your palm.
Well, no, there's also there's a keyboard that works that way, from what I heard. I saw a demo on a keyboard that shines out and you just tap on the table. So instead of carrying around a Bluetooth keyboard, you tap on the table. It shines out from the there's a camera that comes out that projects the keyboard that you type on. So I don't know. Don't quote me on that one either. I saw a prototype over at Google I/O, so which is funny because it's Google, and I'm looking at an iPhone. That was last week actually. So. And it'll be all over the internet. Given another couple more days, all that stuff will be on the internet. but long story short, it's interesting, and there's a strategy to it, though. So, okay, so that was the threat. That was the the second bullet point here: the threat of new entrants into the industry. The threat of substitute products, which might capture market share. Then, well, that's the substitute product right there. That Samsung, the Galaxy Note, the Galaxies versus the iPhone. So. See, threat posed by substitute products, the bargaining power of customers. That's an important factor, and as well as the suppliers. It used to be that suppliers were pretty much held captive by the manufacturer who was using their supplies, and they were pretty exclusive. Now suppliers are more global, and there's more of a reach out to different companies, which is an interesting scenario, because do you want an iPhone made at the same factory with the same supplies and the same suppliers as a Galaxy? Or, you know, and then how are you going to justify the cost difference between the two of them? And there's pricing strategies as well, but you want your suppliers to be your suppliers, but suppliers have bargaining power. So it's kind of an interesting concept with how that works. Versus the competitive strategy. So these are the driving, let me go back to this model for a second, because that way you have to actually see the big picture in order for any of this stuff to make sense. These are the forces. These exist, whether you're in business or not. These are the driving competitive forces from Porter's model. And you Google his name and you'll see hundreds of pages on his model. It's used a lot in a lot of different scenarios. The stuff over here, the competitive strategies, this is the stuff you can do as a manager. This is your job, is to control this. You're going this way. Over all of them, you're battling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different models. Your arrow may not necessarily go to the end. It might not hit all. It might not hit all forces. It might not deal with all forces. This one's dealing with all forces in this example. So you might only hit, as an example, cost leadership. Might not help you with the bargaining power for customers or for suppliers. But it probably might help you with I don't know, threat of substitutes. Perhaps if you can buy the real product for $100 more, maybe, you know, in terms of cost leadership. But think of these as the competitive strategies your management team's working with, and these are the factors that are just going to exist regardless. So what are these things you're going to deal with? Cost leadership strategy. If you haven't noticed, iPhones are not the cheapest either. They've maintained their price. You're never going to see one, well, you see the older ones for $99 or so, but it's not driven by Apple. It's driven by cell phone companies like Verizon or AT&T, who need to get rid of product, essentially, that are stuck with product they've overproduced. But for the most part, you're never going to see a MacBook go down ridiculously low, like $299, like you will some other manufacturers. It's not going to happen. Also, the differentiation strategy, differentiating yourself in the market. So, although it's kind of an interesting scenario, companies that make cell phones have a cost leadership strategy. They have, some of them are primarily, it's like the haves and the have-nots, actually, what they keep talking about in terms of economics and social behaviors. You know, they could split the world into two sections, and there used to be a middle class, but there is no more middle class. Now it's all lower or upper. They've gone one direction or that. They've done the same thing, essentially, with the cell phone market. It's the haves or the have-not. Either you're going to pay the big bucks or you're not. So we have companies like mostly Android, actually, or Google, that are the, not to call them the haves-nots, but they are the have-nots. It's the people that would buy a phone for $99, or the people that, or for $49 or for $69, just because it's $69. You know, and that same person is going to use the phone for 6 months, 3 months, 4 months. Buy another one, buy another one, buy another one. Or maybe they might hold on to it. That's consumer behavior. But they're in a different market. They're in the cheap market. They're in the I just need a phone. And then you have the what kind of tablet do you want? Do you want the iPad mini? Do you want the iPad? Do you want the, and then we had a couple, and it's not just Apple. Sony tried to get into the market with a $900 Sony tablet, still on the market, not selling so well. High end, well, just look at the Windows, not the RT, but the other version of the Surface. It's about $1,800, $900 with the keyboard and the whole unit. Not cheap. Actually, the Surfaces aren't cheap either. The Surface, the RT version is about $300 or $400 last time I checked. They have gone down in price, and they will probably go down even more because they're not as big of a seller as Microsoft expected. But long story short, we got one end or the other. If you're going to be cheap, you got to be real cheap. If you're going to be expensive, don't be afraid to go expensive, especially with the cost of that item, because sometimes the cost means better value. Depends on the company. Differentiation, making yourself different in the industry. Well, that's pretty hard when you got 500 different Android phones to choose from. How are you going to be any different? So that's really hard to do in certain levels. But the haves can do it. The have-nots, hard to be different down there. Down there is all price generated. The different up above, on the have section of it, you can be Sony, which they were actually trying to compete with a Retina display from an iPad. But actually, what was it that originally merged with Apple? No, two companies merged. Amazon? No. The Nook, Barnes & Noble Nook thing merged with Apple, I think. I don't know if it's been, I know you can Google it. I think it's what was the Barnes & Noble product that they had out there? The Nook? The Nook book? It now has a full Retina display, and it looks exactly like an iPad. It's definitely.
Yeah, Nook was Barnes & Noble.
Who'd they merge with? Apple? We're gonna find out right now. I want to say Apple. I want to say that they merged. They were recently bought out. They were going broke.
Oh yeah, it did.
It's owned by Apple now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But, well, it had to be. They're the only ones with the Retina display. So now they introduced, it's compatible, fully compatible and equivalent, but half the price, or close to half the price of a iPad. You've got the Nook from Barnes & Noble, but it's supposed to be an e-reader. It doesn't have the full capabilities, not the same kind of memory, a little bit different product configuration, same Retina screen. Because people discovered, oh, you know, books, we need to see, we need a nice glare-resistant screen, you know, okay. Anyway, differentiation. They have a good screen quality, but they were actually able to eat up one of their competitors that had good e-reader books. Innovation strategies, being innovative, keeping things wireless, keeping things, you know, technology advanced. Growth strategies as well, significant expansion for the company's capacity to produce those goods and services. And then, actually, more and more today, alliance strategies seems to be the key. So if you're going broke, there's no reason why Barnes & Noble, or not Barnes & Noble, but the Nook product needed to go broke. But they're not a tablet manufacturer, not even an e-reader manufacturer. So you got a company in the wrong business, so you might as well sell that division off to a company that can actually be a good alliance for you. So cost leadership, talk about this a little bit more. Becoming a low-cost producer of products and services. Majority of the industry, it is low cost. You don't necessarily want to be a high-cost producer, and that's not necessarily your corporate goal. If it is, you might want to think your corporate strategy over a little bit more. I want to be the most expensive item, and I want to have the highest cost. No. Finding ways to help suppliers and customers reduce their costs. The only and the best example I can come up with this is eBay and PayPal. So we had two companies that started out that had an alliance that were working together, but as a cost perspective, not such a good thing for the customer, but not such a good thing for either one of the two companies either, especially when they start both working together so closely. So eBay ends up buying PayPal. Reduce their costs significantly in terms of their transaction expenses. Not only that, but the support of the integration of those two features. And if you haven't noticed since this happened, which was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, this happened in the beginning. Now we have integrated PayPal inside of eBay. So if you've noticed, it's part of the eBay listing and it's part of the service and it's all under one roof, which gives you a lot better cost to the consumer, a lot better cost between the companies as well. But you can also use PayPal outside of eBay as well. You don't have to use it just with eBay. But that ownership and that acquisition actually helped them. So it's not just for failing companies, it's for strategic advantages in terms of cost leadership strategies. A lot of manufacturers buy their suppliers in general, which is kind of interesting. Apple has done a lot of that as well. If the supplier is selling you something, they're making a profit on it. And if what they're selling you is part of your core product, and shouldn't you own that company? So what a lot of big companies do is they go around buying their suppliers. Well, they need them, and it's cheaper, yeah?
Apple didn't buy it.
They didn't buy it?
They're still working on it because 17% of the stake is owned by Microsoft.
Oh, Microsoft's got a hand in it, too. Oh. Well, that might be good for Microsoft because they're tanking right now. Yeah. They haven't bought it yet. Okay, so I'm not behind, I'm ahead. I'm already predicting that they're going to buy it. So now I thought they bought them already. This has been going on for months. Yeah. They even moved some of their manufacturing so it's all under the same plant. So the Nooks are being produced in Apple plants, Apple manufacturing facilities. So which is kind of interesting. But if you're trying to work out a deal, maybe you're helping. Which, actually a lot of people don't know this, but a long time ago, Microsoft bailed out Apple, gave them millions and millions of dollars so they would stay in business. And so now the cards have turned, and Apple has recently started talks to bail out Microsoft. Microsoft not doing too well right now. But Apple's doing great. So many years ago, about 10 years ago, the cards were flipped. And Microsoft gave Apple a ton of money just to keep them alive. Just to keep the competition going and just keep them in the market. Now the same thing's happening, but it's the opposite direction. So Apple's predicted to bail out Microsoft. And you're probably wondering, well, how come one of them just doesn't buy the other one out? Because you can't. It'll be like the government and this anti-monopoly thing. Plus, the competition is good. It creates an artificial market, but it creates a market, and it creates competition. And it's almost like if you're like the winning basketball team and everybody else quits, you have nobody to play against, or the biggest sports team. The best football team or whatever is useless without competition. No one's going to sit and watch the same team play over and over and over again, nor are they going to buy tickets to go watch them. So anyway, long story short, Apple and Microsoft pretty much, they like each other. They help each other out. Actually, schools do that all the time, too. So education, especially with the Cal State system. But, yeah, one campus will help another campus out and around. People share labor and everything. Anyway, long story short, leadership, cost leadership, increasing the cost of competitors. Increasing the cost of your competitor getting into the same market is actually kind of interesting, which... if you think about it, you're not going to have any competitors if you've bought out your suppliers. You're not going to have anyone trying to sell you CD-ROM drives or anyone trying to sell you flat screens or something if you already own the supplier already. So, and then increasing the cost of somebody else trying to get into that market. You'd think it'd be counterproductive, but it actually does help in some situations. Also, differentiation strategies. So, those were strategies related to cost. Cost of production, cost of manufacture, cost to consumer. Cost is a big loaded word when it comes to that, but producing lower cost products, keeping your costs under control. If your product costs too much to make, you're not necessarily going to make a profit on it in the long run. Doesn't matter how good the product works. So differentiation, developing ways to differentiate the firm's products and the services from its competitors. Now then we're looking at, as I was mentioning before, the core competencies of companies. Actually Sony used to make some really good screens and electronic components. Sony still has a really good reputation for that. So does, what is it, Mitsubishi or something like that. RCA has a good reputation for being cheap. A Radio Shack brand. I mean, so certain companies have certain reputations or certain differentiations in the market. Think about it just like stores, which is kind of deceiving because you'd think that Walmart would be like the cheapest, better, or no, I'm sorry, it's a Target. I used to think Target's got terrible prices. Things are cheaper at Walmart. But I personally used to think that Target was like the cheap place and that Walmart was just like the chain, like a bigger version of that. But then I recently discovered, no, Walmart's got cheaper prices than Target. Target's actually got higher prices than Walgreens for some things. So, but anyway, Walgreens was supposed to be the pharmacy, the drug store. Target, I don't know what Target was supposed to be. Walmart, if you haven't noticed, if you go anywhere, there's always a Walmart, and they're always next to the freeway exits. Walmart originally started for travelers. They were kind of like the McDonald's version of the Traveler. So McDonald's was travelers. You went on a road trip, you swung by McDonald's right off the freeway. They're at every rest stop. And then they became a fast food chain for everyday people. Well, Walmart did the same thing. They were supposed to be the travelers. You're on the road, you need to stop. You go to a Walmart, they have everything. And they're inexpensive instead of going to the big mall kind of thing. They're like a mall replacement. Now there's a Walmart everywhere. They're like, and Walmart actually has grocery stores now too, which is kind of weird. So I don't know how they're differentiating themselves when they're all becoming the same. But the more that the company itself can make itself different, differentiate itself from the market, then the better chance that it has in terms of survival rate, because nobody else, there's fewer number of companies in the same business. If all drugstores were the same, if all supermarkets were the same, then you have no differentiation. You can get rid of half of them and keep half of them. Doesn't really matter where you go.
How about brands? Depends what brand they sell. It's the different brands.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Brand recognition. You used to have a lot of that in the clothing market. Still do, actually. That stuff will never go away. But you guys remember the day of the brand tags? Like the tag was like sewn on the outside of the clothes. This is Levi. I mean, not Levi, but
Still there.
still there. Oh, well, I'm totally out of connection with reality, so it doesn't really matter. You can probably tell from half of what I wear. I'm cost focused. I'm a teacher. I don't have any money for brands. All right, reduction of the differentiation advantages of competitors as well. Making your competitor seem like everybody else. That's what Apple has sort of done with the Android market, actually, by making themselves, differentiating themselves against Android as an entire group. But if you think about it, there's a lot of different Android subsections. You have your Android prepaid market, you got your tablet market, you got your phone market. But when we think Android, we think all the same. And actually the funny thing is, though, is that Windows can't fit into there. So the Windows phones aren't doing so well because they don't have a marketplace. They're not Android and they're not Apple. They're stuck in the middle. They don't belong anywhere. They're Windows. Windows doesn't make phones. It's like if Target were to make a phone. Who's going to buy the Target phone? Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if Target made phones. So. Let's see, innovation strategies, another point here. Development of unique products and services and being innovative. You know who's really done this is the cable companies. I'm waiting for them to actually have fully integrated internet and computer services. Like Comcast actually has pretty much has that. So they have cable modem service. So they what do they used to sell? Comcast used to sell digital or not digital, analog cable TV, but now they sell cable modem, high speed internet access. Well, they also sell telephone service now. So we got telephone, we got the cable service, we got the internet access. Well, what about like cloud services? We don't have that yet, but it's kind of with the DVR stuff, it's getting there. So why don't they just be your full service provider of everything? So, which is kind of interesting because if you think about it, the cable, the high definition cable, the DSL servers all piggybacked on the telecom system. How come they didn't piggyback on the electrical system? And why isn't the electrical company in any of this? Which is kind of an interesting question, and it's because electrical is not privatized. It's government run. It's a utility. And phone service was never considered a utility, neither is cable service. So, which is not necessarily a competition factor, but it's an environment factor. It's the government and the way the political system is running that's going to prevent that advancement. But wouldn't the electrical company be the best provider of everything? They're already hardwired into every single house that's out there. Everybody has power. So you could have piggybacked the cable service off of the power lines, just like same way as they piggybacked DSL off of the telecom lines. Nobody would have even noticed. The infrastructure is already built. But they're not going to do it. They're never going to do it. But that's the electrical company. They got everything. There's not a house in the world that does not have electricity in it. There's a lot of houses that don't have cable. There's a lot of houses that don't have telephone either. So, and what you're thinking about in terms of innovation is being able to piggyback off of a current technology. Aren't these all electrical technologies anyway? None of these things would work without power. So, anyway, point taken. Entry into unique markets and market niches. Well, that's what Apple did. They're still most of their profit. Apple's not a computer company. They're not even an iPhone manufacturer. They're a content provider. Their iTunes gives them more than 40% of their gross revenue. So they make all of their money off of iTunes by selling you a movie or a song or something. That's where they make most of their money. So now, are they still making those other products? Yeah. It's like you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Plus, you have to have something for people to buy iTunes from. You need a phone so that they can buy that stuff. Actually, I was recently looking at, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Apple TV, but I recently resurrected my old Apple TV because I wanted to use it in a room that didn't have cable, and I upgraded the software on it, and wow, they have really improved that. And you think, well, they're not even in the TV business. Why in the world are they even? They're not in the DVR or the TV business or anything, but you can go through the iTunes store now directly. I didn't know this because I had the first generation. Apparently, they're up to like the third generation now. But they allow you to upgrade the software, so I get third generation features. But long story short, you can go, like your iPhone, you could do it on this little device that's connected to your TV, and it's all stored on the little device, and you can network it throughout your house, which I didn't realize. Well, the older version wasn't working that way, but I was really impressed, actually, and I'm thinking they sell these suckers for $99, the brand new one. Well, it's not a little bad little device. Unfortunately, though, you want to buy a movie, you can buy it or you can rent it like Netflix. So they're also doing the Netflix. Well, they're not Netflix, but they're doing a service similar to that. But it's like $20 for a DVD through there. It's a little too high for me. But I was impressed. I think that people actually buy that. So, radical changes, making radical changes to the business process for producing or distributing. Radical changes might be buying your supplier, relocating your plant out or your manufacturing offshore, changing your strategies, introducing robotics or something of that nature, which is like what the car companies did, putting in robotics, stuff like that. Make your different products and services that are so different from the way a business has to be conducted that they alter the fundamental structure of the industry. Robotics actually would be a perfect example of that. No, robotics cuts down on the assembly line work. So especially also buying prefab parts, which if you think about it, some of you might not be familiar with the housing market in the United States, but in other areas where you want cheap housing, you buy prefab housing. They're like mobile home, but they're not really mobile home. They're like pre-built homes. They come and they deliver the house and they stick it on the lot. They're like maybe $20,000, $30,000 for this house. You know, compared to $200,000 or $300,000 for like a really built, like a built with a foundation and stuff. They're called prefabs, or they used to be called prefabs. But it was an innovative way of creating a house for somebody. You needed a house, you get like 2 weeks, we'll deliver the house for you. Okay, you put it in. Instead of taking like a year to build this house. But if you have a farming company, I don't know, agricultural stuff, has them out in the other side of California, the rural areas of California, where we have farming that goes on. There's a lot of these prefab houses because they're cheap and they're a house. They work just like a house. You just need a house. You need a place to sleep in the middle of the orchard. Here you are. Because you don't have anything else on this land outside of trees, water. So, growth strategies, significant expanding the company's capacity to produce goods and services, growing as a company, which is an interesting, expanding into global markets, also another strategy to remain competitive. It's not necessarily the bigger that you are, it's the more efficient that you are. If you want to talk about a growth strategy that has gone wrong, you can use Starbucks as a classic example of that. And when you think of Starbucks, most people think successful company. Yes, they were very successful, and they still are a very successful company, but there was a time period in which they grew too fast. So it ended up happening about, I don't know how many years ago this is by now, but they had too many Starbucks stores. You know, they just kept popping up everywhere. You turn around, there's a Starbucks. Well, those stores are expensive. It's not like you're going to buy coffee online either. You're going to go to the store and buy it. So they wanted to, as they grew, they did not have a good growth strategy. So this is an example of a bad growth strategy. But they did a nice reduction strategy that worked quite well, which started a pattern that a lot of other companies have taken on as well in terms of, you know, going back to Barnes & Noble. They're in a reduction mode right now. They're taking out all of their stores. Why don't they don't need them anymore? So it's a nice scale down strategy from the growth, opposite of a growth, it's reduce. So what they did is Starbucks went around and they surveyed and went, well, where are these stores? They're all over the place now. And then they measured the distances between them and the buying habits, and they looked at the numbers over about 6 months to a year or so, and then they decided, well, we can cut out, you know, 30–40% of these stores and make more money. So then they took the stores out, just shut the stores down, or relocated a store to a central location, close this one, and put one in the middle or something, so that they could attract more customers. And they still do the same amount of business, but they have fewer stores, so it's less overhead that they have to pay for, which is like downscaling, downsizing, because they grew too fast, which is kind of an interesting scenario. So a lot of people are afraid to close stores, you know, afraid to, because it looks like it's failure. But in honest, it made their the stock of their price go up, made the company more valuable, made them more profitable. Actually, just closed down a few stores. And it's kind of like, you know, like the air travel stuff. People stopped, 9/11 was pretty drastic for air travel. People stopped flying. You know, for about a year straight or so, people were afraid to fly. Well, people are still afraid to fly. So instead of cutting down on the number of planes and stuff like that, well, a lot of the air travel companies that for passengers went into the cargo business instead. So why have a FedEx plane fly when you can have a Southwest plane fly, and it's going to the same location, same airport? They all go in airports, right? So you fill up the bottom, you undersell the top, you oversell the bottom. So instead of flying passengers, you fly cargo, which was a great kind of strategy, a competitive strategy that airline companies had to come up with in order to figure out how we're going to stay in business while people are afraid to fly. And then, lo and behold, people came back to flying. It wasn't like people weren't going to fly forever. So now, you know, people are now back to flying, so they're not selling as much cargo. And then now they're thinking, well, that's value. Let's charge the company, well, the price of gas. So the price of the fuel went up. So let's charge the customer for the cargo that they're carrying, because what they carry down below, you can't sell to somebody else. So you might as well charge them for it. Especially if you've got an excessive level of bags, you should be paying for it. So, oh, there's people that travel with a lot of bags. So charge them for it. So let's see, expanding into global markets, diversifying with new products and services, integrating into new related products and services. It's kind of like the iPod manufacturer selling iPhones, which is actually kind of funny because Apple doesn't go into that. Apple doesn't sell very many, well, they sell some accessories, but they let the accessory market sell it instead. They're not big. Most of the Apple stuff is better to buy after party, third party. You know, like all of the cases and all of the headphones and all of those other little accessory pieces for all of these iPods and iPhones that are out there. Let the other people do it. So, which is funny because they could go into that accessory market, but they don't. Some companies do go into the accessory market. Depends on how big your volume is, I guess. So, alliance strategies, establishing new business linkage of alliances with customers, suppliers, competitors, consultants, and other companies. This is more along the enterprise. They used to call this enterprise computing, enterprise alliances. Now that word enterprise has gone away because people don't like that for some reason. Maybe it sounds like too much like Star Trek or something. The Enterprise, the USS Enterprise. I don't know. No, now it's more of an alliance in terms of the way that's worded. Basically, building strategic relationships with your competitors. Now, I kind of tried to give you an example for most of the kind of general strategies. Here's some more examples. The slide itself. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Oh, maybe too big. They're just some examples in terms of the strategic use of information technology and then business benefits in terms of what they've done. Here we've got, in the beginning, the concept of the auction from the eBay perspective, the online auctions, and then the auction set prices, their pricing structures. So if you're an eBay company, as an example, and you want to further innovate, and you want to, because people think, well, how much more innovation can happen, and lots of stuff can happen. They've come out with recently, the mobile, list your thing through a mobile phone, list your item this way, that way, all these different pricing strategies and things in terms of selling the item. They could actually branch out a little bit further and have more dynamic pricing, and they can have more features. So constantly keeping up in terms of a way of staying ahead of your competition. But if you think about it, there is no competition for eBay. It's one of those companies that doesn't have very much competition to it to begin with. So that might actually be hard for them to come up with new innovative ways. But looking at the business benefit and the implementation of the technology, these are boring, not quite as drastic examples. As an example, Federal Express, online package tracking, flight management. The flight management I just talked about a few minutes ago with the buying excess cargo space. Amazon.com, full service computer systems. There's Amazon opened up stores. Actually, eBay opened up stores as well. Not so popular. Now, especially in California, I don't believe we ever even got a store here. But parts of the Midwest had eBay stores, so people would load up their truck, take it over to the eBay store, unload this, put it all online. Problem with that is you're looking at a thrift store, you're looking at a flea market. Then you got to transport the stuff over to the store because you don't have a computer at home to list it at. And then you have to pay them a fee because they're not going to do it for free. They have a consulting fee for them to list your item online. And then either you got to take your item back home, or you got to keep it in your car till it sells, or you got to load it in their warehouse. It's defeats the purpose of eBay if you think about it. So anyway, so we have other competitive strategies that might be considered. So above and beyond what I've already mentioned, the other competitive strategies might be in the area of locking in customers or suppliers. So locking in the customer or the supplier by building valuable new relationships with them. Isn't that what the cell phone companies do all the time? You buy the phone, it's only $99 instead of $900. And you're like, who in the world would buy that phone for $900 anyway? But you have to sign a 2-year contract. So contracts, actually, it's not just the cellular companies that do that. Computer companies do that. Cable TV companies do that. Everybody does that. Which is actually kind of interesting because people don't like the contracts. So if you don't like the contract, and then that's your competitive advantage is you don't have to sign a contract. Or you'll have a 1-year contract instead, or a 6 months contract or something. Even the real estate market tried to do that with contracts, with loans. Bad loan deals. Lock you in. Well, it's called lock-in. And it's just the same way as the ads portray. It's the same thing. But companies are still doing it, which is kind of weird. Also, switching costs, building up the switching costs. That's the problem with Apple. Huge switching cost. You got everything in iTunes, you got everything running through Apple. You're not going to switch off of that. And those people who have switched off of that know it's kind of an ordeal. You got to take and recreate your address book because it doesn't sync anymore. It's hard to switch, which is why they want to keep you as long as possible because they don't want you to switch. It's hard to switch. So it makes the customers or supplier, makes them reluctant to pay the cost, maybe in time, money, effort, or inconvenience as well, that it could take to switch a company's competitors. In fact, the switching was, going back to the airline scenario, that's what the United Miles are all about. Miles. You can't use another airline, you won't get the miles. Well, Safeway's doing that now with gas stations. So we got, the gas card, you earn the points. You got to go to the store to earn the points. You got to spend the points at the gas station that's owned by the grocery store. Huh?
Yeah.
Same as Costco. Yeah, Costco. I don't like Costco gas. Don't put supermarket. Here's another commercial for you. Don't put supermarket gas in your car. Anyway. Some people are going to complain on that concept. All right. Okay, other competitive strategies, raising the bar to entry. What could discourage or delay other companies from entering into the market? Keeping your technology yourself. This is where a lot of the IP strategies have come into place. Yeah, intellectual property protection. So what you do is you lock down the intellectual property and make sure that if anyone else goes into the business, they have to pay you a royalty. That will deter everybody else from going into business against you. So what they do with that, Apple did it with the Retina screen. We're not going to have anything else that's even going to have the word Retina written on it. Not going to work. They got the market on that. So there's no more anybody else who's going to. If you want to have a nice reader, you got to go buy one that has a Apple Retina on it. Or you got to pay. If you're going to produce the product, you're going to pay Apple for it. Actually, the same thing happened for the longest time with, which is the reason why it took such a long time for mobile devices, the smartphone, all that technology was protected in the beginning. So you only have 10 years on the protection. Once the patents wear out, after about 10 years on that, it's an open market. So you can't use this barrier to entry strategy past about 10 years on that market, for that type of marketing strategy. So. Leveraging the investment as well in the information technology by developing new products and services that would not be possible without a strong IP capability. You can also leverage it with the product mix, so leveraging the new technology and the leveraging it so it's not possible for competitors to come in because they don't have the same infrastructure that you have, which is kind of like iTunes. Who's going to compete with iTunes? You can't. I mean, there's a couple of other people, Rhapsody and LimeWire and a couple of other companies out there. It's like trying to compete with eBay, trying to compete with Google. You don't have the IT infrastructure, and if you do, I'd spend the money on something else. Because it's going to be too much money to even get into that market. And then we have the advantage versus the necessity. So then we have the competitive advantages versus the competitive necessity, which is kind of an interesting thought. So developing products, services, processes, or capabilities that give a company a superior business position relative to its competitors and other competitive forces. That's the positioning or the advantage that the company has. So in terms of the strategy of remaining competitive, You can take it from an advantage perspective or from a necessity. So the products and services, processes, or capabilities that are necessary simply to compete or do business in an industry. So from a competitive necessity, then you're going to work up to an advantage. You're going to have one or the other. You're going to have both playing, depending upon your strategy. So it's kind of like if you're it's kind of like if you're selling iTunes and you don't have a product that delivers the service. It's kind of from a competitive necessity perspective, you need to keep selling iPods. You still need to keep selling computers too. You can't get past that either. You're still a computer company. You're Apple Computers. So was your full name. You're not going to get out of the computer business either. So from an advantage perspective, you don't necessarily have to make the same decisions as you do from a necessity perspective. So is it necessary for you to sell headphones? No, but you still include a cheap pair that goes along with the product. I've never used those actually because they don't fit into my ears, but every single iPod you buy or every single it has those little headphones in it. So do the computers, I think, too. It's not like those little remote controls that come with them, too. But I've used the remote controls. They work great. So customer-focused business. So we have different, so what I've done now is finished going through the strategies that you need for the competitive forces in the model. Now we have some other factors that kind of can play with the competition theme for today. Customer-focused businesses. So a customer-focused business by definition, what do we can? We can anticipate customers' future needs, respond to customers' concerns, provide top-quality customer service. Isn't it like what the car manufacturers do? Well, cars are a luxury item. Well, they've turned into a luxury. They used to be a necessity item. Now they're a luxury item. At one point in time, they were a status item. I don't know if they're still status anymore. Now they're luxury. Or they're bonus items. So usually when people, they think of, you stop a person on the street and you say, well, what's a sign of success? How do you know when you're successful? And usually the first two things that come out of their mouth is you own a nice house, you own a home, and you own a car. So if that's the case, then you're going to work with customer-focused business as a perspective because the customer's going to want it. So what do they want? Oh, they want safety. They want airbags. They want GPS in there. They want navigation control. Now they're getting all these high-tech things. They're getting computers in the cars. And they're getting, well, hopefully one of these days you'll be able to buy a Google car maybe and just, not even have to drive the thing anymore. So, but that's a good example of a customer-focused product in general is the car as a concept. Is really become a status/necessity/customer-focused business. Provides top-quality customer service as well. So information system in a customer-focused business. So those people have taken information systems courses, have heard of the CRM, customer relationship management, and those components. And maybe you've even taken, if you've had the business strategies before, you've learned how some CRM systems actually ruin a business. Because technology and customers don't normally blend traditionally. You don't want to be sitting at home. How many people hang up? I hang up immediately when a computer calls me. Hello, this is the automated. I waste my cell phone minutes on this automated response system that's telling me that my dental appointment is 2 weeks from today. I already have it written down. Although they are effective. It's kind of like cold calling. Very effective, actually. But we have technology that's applied towards customers, that's applied towards databases and transactions and all sorts of different things to house the business or to add customers. So here we have this simple little information system solution that uses a database. It's got a customer database, a transaction database. So you buy something and hopefully it should work with the customer database. So another actually interesting way of doing imagining how this can be used from a strategic perspective is going back to the car industry. So I think it was BMW that used to do it. I don't know if they're still doing it, but you got 2 free years of scheduled maintenance when you bought the car. So you didn't even have to buy a car to know this. You could watch the commercials on TV. And then everybody else had to include free scheduled maintenance. Well, it's actually a customer-centric strategy that was very profitable, because what you're doing is you're selling them 2 years of it's built into the price. So you gotta have to have an expensive product to begin with, one in which people are willing to pay a little bit extra for. So they take like a BMW or a Mercedes. You can't do this with a lower end like a Kia or something like that. It's not going to work. Or Zion, I think is the next Kia replacement. Kia's made it up the ranks. And we have Xeon, I don't know what that company is. It's on the bottom now. It's like everyone's competition for the bottom, the lowest priced car on the industry. Kia had it for a long time. They got overtaken. Anyway, long story short, you sell the customer an expensive car to begin with. You tack on another couple grand, because what does it cost for service? $200 or $300. It does actually for a BMW. You put that on there. You times it by 20 or 10, 1 or 2 years, 12. 12, 24. How many months you're going to do it? How many services are going to be in there? You divide it all out. You tack it onto the price of the car. Now you got a customer who is going to visit you for the next 2 years. It's kind of like the Apple strategy. They're going to walk into your showroom. They're going to be on your premises for 2 years straight. And they're going to keep that car for 2 years straight because they have 2 years free maintenance. And then you're going to upsell them into another car. Or you're going to cross-sell them into another line. Oh, you have a family now. Here's the SUV. Or no, oh, you're getting older. Here's a 2-door convertible. You're going to cross-sell them, upsell them. Because you can. You have them. You've locked them in, essentially. And not a bad strategy. Unfortunately, not a competitive strategy for everybody else, because they're not, oh no, I got to give them 2 years. Well, this car comes with 2 years free maintenance. And then the salesperson is going to try and tell you, oh, no, they tacked it onto the price. Oh, no, they didn't. So it's not a good thing for the customer. And then what ended up happening is it kind of failed in the long run, because prices, you got to be competitive. You can't sell it for that much. You got to keep deducting it. Long story short, it worked for a while. I'm not sure if it's still going on, but in the long run, it didn't pay off quite well, because consumers will just get rid of their car after they sell it. Or make the warranty non-transferable. That's another trick. Non-transferable warranties, like they've done with the non-transferable loans, can't transfer it, which means you have to hold on to it. So anyway, this is just a kind of a scenario using the internet. Going through linking customers with partners and distribution centers, linking customers to place more orders, to upgrade their products for their services and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of like how Apple sort of delivers their new products through their customer retention that they're calling iTunes Upgrade and iOS upgrades. So they have, FaceTime for a while, and they have a bunch of other products and services that they sell you through the upgrades. Because when you upgrade the OS on the phone, then you find out, oh, I have this now. Oh, I have that now. In order to use it, you have to spend $5 or something like that, or you have to buy it. So outside of looking at it from a customer perspective, we can also look at it from a value chain. So remaining competitive in terms of the definition of what the value chain is going to add here. Viewing the view of the firm as a series or a chain, so you've got one aspect or one phase that leads into another, or a network of basic activities that are going to add value to the products and services, create the margin of value both to the firm and to its customers. So we have the supply chain, value chain. We have, imagine the word chain used in a business concept. Put it into the competitive value chain. And then we have things that build on other things that give us an end result, hopefully that will come back around with some feedback maybe and improve the chain as it goes through. So if we take a value chain perspective, we can kind of look at it, and here's another view of it. Inbound logistics with operations, with outbound logistics, with marketing and sales and service, with some sort of a margin that's going to come out of it in the end. It's this combination of these different parts of services and divisions of the company that's going to contain hopefully the chain that's going to essentially lead to some greater profit or competitive advantage. And keeping in mind the firm's infrastructure, human resources, technology development, procurement, stuff like that. So it might just be a matter of looking at the value chain and deciding where to cut costs or where to add technology or improvements or innovations to help the process. So And when we start looking at a value chain, we're looking at more than one activity in a company. So we're looking at multiple divisions, multiple flows of data between the divisions. And in that particular case, we're looking at more of a global, not a global, but like a company-wide solution. So imagine a value chain of ITU. Now don't get me in trouble when I say this. If I were to improve the quality of the value chain of the student at ITU, and he's the student services guy, that's why I said don't. What happens in the classroom stays in the classroom. You're a student right now. All right, so if you're a university, you want your primary focus is to get new customers, new students, keep the students. So the focus should be on student retention and student graduation rates and student success. So they did a really good thing, and it hasn't been up until maybe about, how long have you been here? 6 months? They should have had you 4 years ago, 5 years ago. They decided to hire you 4 months ago. He's the first of his kind. He's in student services, if I get this right. You're in charge of the ITU value chain, the student value chain, actually. So what other universities do is they develop this alumni network. We have an alumni network. Starting now? That's good. You put together, okay, so talk about, I'm giving you an example of value chain. I'm not complaining about ITU or criticizing. I'm using them as an example. They're probably a mistake, but let's see. And if you're a university and you're going to put together this type of system that I'm trying to describe here, you're going to look at all assets. You're going to look at the teachers, you're going to look at the classes that are being offered, the graduates and the students, which are also part of the equation, and the services that you're providing them and what you're doing with them. You're going to increase the student population, which increases the value of everything else. You increase the faculty competency or the offerings of the programs and the classes, which increases the, it's a chain reaction. So the better classes, the better quality student, or the more broader range of students, the more students, the more alumni, the more promotion of the alumni, the more, oh yeah, so-and-so, I went to this school, you should try it out. Referrals. So through the Alumni Association, you get the referrals, you get the multiple degrees, you get, the cross degrees. Oh, I came to ITU for business, now I'm studying engineering, or hey, I came here and I'm studying engineering, now I want to get a PhD in engineering or something. You get the upselling, the side selling, and it's part of the value chain. So companies use the value chain as their competitive advantage, makes them stronger. So companies like ITU should focus on student volume because that's where their core competency is in an international student, getting in volumes of students, which is kind of an interesting case. Stanford can't do volume. They do research. They need output. They need to show that they invented this and they invented that. And this is what they gave to something, Other companies, they deal with corporate relationships, like Heald College, ITT Tech, Expressions College. Some of those other little smaller, closely niched, they're industry related, so they have to work with design studios, they have to work with company sponsorships, entrepreneurial programs, stuff that has a close tie to the industry. I have no idea what we're going to do in the future, but I see us evolving a little bit, which is a good stake. But one of these days, ITU will put itself in the market, position itself, because we're so new in terms of being WASC accredited and being part of the university environment. I don't think we have a place yet. So one of the things I think that I see from a management perspective, as I see us falling into a place, which would be interesting because we have our hands in a lot of different avenues. We're doing research now, the EE Lab. We're doing new programs. We're doing online coming up in fall. We got all these little things going on. It'll be interesting where our value chain actually takes us to, which, if you see the arrow here, we're all going, it's all going in one direction, but it's all divided out into different parts and different concentrations, which is interesting. But for university, the student is the customer. So the student, I would think, would have been the first primary goal in terms of customer satisfaction to increase the value chain. Because you get a good student population that likes the school. That just, it's like when people like a product, everybody's got to buy the product. there's the student value chain. Which is interesting that it took about 4 or 5 years before we got a student representative, but I'm glad you're here. So what do we got here? We got support services and we got business services, which is kind of interesting because you don't have the same kind of breakdown in an education environment, but you do, which is kind of interesting. So if you look at this value chain, so this is the bigger picture of all the different departments. You know, you got human resources in here, and you got technology development in here for a company. You come down here and you look at this kind of perspective. It's broken out a little bit more detail. So you have support services and you have primary business processes. So to take this out of education, put it back out into product companies now, Compaq was actually really good at customer support. They had a terrible product line. And they didn't know how to manufacture anything correctly. But they had really good customer support. So did Gateway, actually, at one point. Gateway still has it pretty good, but Dell has even better corporate alliance. So these companies have positioned themselves with their value chain using, and I use this word too much, and I call it, the word I use too much is called core competencies. I like to overuse that word. It's kind of like user-friendly. When a business can find their core competency, which I call everything, then they've actually can make improvements on their value chain. And their value chain is having everything come together. So what's happening in customer service isn't being, taken and ruined by the technical support people, which isn't being ruined by the salespeople, which isn't being ruined by the customers or something like or product image or something like that. Unfortunately, what ended up happening with Compaq is they weren't competitive enough. I don't know exactly what happened to them, but they were pretty much a failure from the get-go. Didn't make very much money. Other companies made a lot of money, didn't make, and they went down. These guys just flatlined it for the entire life. It's nice to be able to make a lot of money and then go down to the toilet. At least you were successful at one point. Which is interesting. Or you could be like an Apple or a Microsoft, up and down like a yo-yo, the constant life. But anyway, the bottom line, what I'm trying to say is all of the pieces working together that gives us our value chain. So it's everybody working together, hopefully. And so there's a lot of software and there's a lot of innovation that's been applied recently. The biggest thing that most people can probably remember just from advertising perspective is this thing called ERP. Enterprise Resource Planning. Okay, now honestly, about 60%, 70% of the business people out there using an ERP system don't know what it is. They have no idea what in the world they're working with. Most of the business people that are selling these ERP systems have no idea what it's supposed to. It's for this. It's to improve this, is what it's for. It's to improve the value chain. It's integrating, okay, so ERP, if you don't know, stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. The word enterprise got knocked out the window about 5 years ago because people, going back to my Starship Enterprise comment, people don't like the word enterprise. So enterprise itself didn't catch on for some reason. But if you think and you like the word enterprise, it means everybody. So your suppliers, your manufacturers, your manufacturing plant, your salespeople, your customers, everybody's part of your value chain, all part of the enterprise. So resource is supposed to be, and resource planning is supposed to bring everybody together. So you're taking your inventory and you're making it available to your supply chain management people who are supposed to be procuring, hopefully, the resources, the supplies, everything that's going to go into the manufacturer, everything that's going to go into the product, packaging, because all that stuff counts. If you make a $200 iPod and it costs you $300 to produce the packaging for it, you're not making any profit for it. And in a big company, one guy's not watching all this stuff going on. All of this stuff is happening behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden you're told, oh, we're making a profit. Oh, we're not making a profit. So ERP was, let's make it all known. let's put it all out there. Make it so that manufacturing and knows what research and development is doing, knows what customer service is doing, knows what the customers are doing, knows what our suppliers are doing. It was an attempt to restructure all the business tasks, make them all integrate, put them all together, and put it in this really huge online system of some sort, or this intranet system, where everybody's sharing and using the same data. So we know how much everything costs, and we can kind of see. And then we had all these tools that go with it. All these, and then most of them were like PeopleSoft or SAP. There's a lot of different modules that work with everything. And then you can customize the tool for the type of business that you're running. Like if it's a retail company versus a service company or a manufacturing company. Long story short, you can't go out to Fry's and buy one of these things. They're like $200,000 or $300,000. They're huge. They're expensive. And you can't just install one and have everybody use it. You have to go and you have to do what's called business process reengineering and business or continuous process engineering, and go through and change the way everybody does their job to meet the system. So you spend a lot of money on a system, you put it into place, you change everybody's jobs and make them all use the system. All the workflow has come to a complete halt while everybody's transferring everything over and adapting to the new system. It takes about 6 months to a year to do it. You have to take all the old data, put it into the new system, and then you got to do a benchmark to see if it was worth the expense. So a lot of big companies that do this pull it out, or they put it in and they don't use it. It just sits there. And then 90%, or I shouldn't say 90, about 60%, that, oh yeah, we have this ERP system. What does it do? I don't know what it does. I think we even have an ERP system at ITU. I don't know, we might have an ERP system. I don't know what it does. One of the most misunderstood systems. But that would actually help organize this, because it puts everything together. It's an enterprise-wide planning system that can hopefully integrate everybody's efforts and everybody's work. When used correctly, it does actually come out and produce some successful results. Only problem is it needs to be put in the beginning. What startup company is going to be able to afford an ERP system? Not happening in the beginning. It's always an afterthought 5 years down the road. Oh, we're successful now. Let's put a lot of money into an ERP system. And then you got to spend a lot of money to adapt to the system. So these are just primary business processes along with support processes all work together. So the book actually comes into a bunch of case studies. I'm going to skip the case studies because we're not following this book. I'm just giving you the topic essentially. So I'm going to kind of skip through these little case studies. Talk about business process reengineering. So as an engineering manager, you're not necessarily hired because they have management expertise. So if you're a company and you're going to put an ad up to hire an engineering manager, you got problems. The company's got problems. Because you're going to need to find someone who's got management skill, who knows technology, who knows engineering, who knows process, who's energy driven, who's can actually make improvements. You're almost looking at business process reengineering at this point, because either you're going to fire everybody, hire new people, or you're going to hire a couple of key strategic managers. We actually did that here at ITU. We hired Dr. O'Brien, our WASC. He's our engineering manager for this school, actually. We were looking to get WASC accredited, couldn't figure out how to do it. Well, get some guy who's done it before. Bring some guy in here who knows what he's doing. Make him a VP of something or an executive something. Get him in here, and he did. He did it. We got successful, and now they're like, don't get rid of him. Keep him. We need him. He doesn't really have a job right now, but keep him because we need to stay accredited. But he was one person who stepped in to restructure the organization, restructure the entire governance, the faculty governance, restructure the administration, created jobs like his job, did everything that we were supposed to do. One guy. So unfortunately, that ends up happening as engineering managers. You're the person they're going to hire to. You're going to be and you're not going to have a title that says engineering manager on it. You're going to be senior something or other. It's usually a senior level position. or you're going to be VP something or other, when you finally get this job, or maybe you'll be promoted up into it, one of the first things that ends up happening is business process reengineering to give you a competitive advantage, because there's something wrong. There's problems, which is why they hired you. So by definition, fundamentally rethinking and radically redesigning the business processes to achieve dramatic improvement in cost, quality, speed, and service. When I see the word business process reengineering, the first word that comes to my head, like word association, you know, they show you a picture. So they show me a picture of business process reengineering. I mean, it's layoffs. That's where we get layoff from. Layoffs. Why are we going to lay off? We're going to get rid of. So usually there's an initiative. So the company's not doing well, or we're not competitive enough, or too slow, or sometimes there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. So what you need to end up having to do as business process reengineering is get rid of people. Lay off 30% of the staff, 40% of the staff. Take the current jobs that they're doing, reassign them to other jobs, re-engineer the entire department or entire organization to run better, essentially more efficient, cost savings. And it's not necessarily that you're going to save the company any money by getting rid of 30%, because you're going to have to spend more money in the infrastructure. So you're upgrading computer systems, you're putting in ERP systems or CRM systems or supply chain systems, you're adding the technology support to better position the people so that the people are more productive. So it's a trade-off in the long run. You get rid of the dead weight, you make the good weight, the live weight work more efficiently, and then right now you've improved the process right there. So it's called business process reengineering, aka layoffs, which is the exact opposite of what they call CPI, continuous process improvement. So you go into quality management, you take quality, because you guys are mostly all business students. So you get all this stuff in quality management. I'm just giving you a perspective from a competitive environment. One of the things you can do, and they don't call it layoffs, they call it BPI, but it is a layoff technique where you're reducing something, you're reducing the staffing, or you're getting rid of people's jobs and you're replacing them with other people that have a better outlook, or better personality, or better work habits, or better ethics or roles or something, which is interesting. So I don't have a CPI slide underneath here, but continuous process improvement is less drastic. Instead of doing, they categorize business process reengineering as layoffs because it's instant. If you have to lay people off, it means you have to cut drastically and do it now, which means you let the problem go on for too long. Continuous process improvement, that basically says, well, we're not going to wait until we have to lay people off, we just won't hire you. And then you continuously go through and monitor what people are doing, and you continuously, it's a more incremental, less drastic kind of changes that you're making with a CPI approach. But that's one of the things you do as a competitive advantage to sort of fix things, I should say. The other thing that everyone is doing these days is going online. So if you're going to go online, you're going to look at the e-commerce model. We've got, and this picture, the font's kind of weird because this is a preview and it's supposed to be a PowerPoint presentation, so the fonts kind of are bigger than they fit. But what this is looking at is two kinds of concepts for the value chain analysis, which is disintermediation, and the other word is reintermediation. So if you're going to be working in a VP position and you're thinking about how are we going to reposition the company, how are we going to save money, how are we going to do something, either you get rid of the middlemen and reposition those, switch the responsibilities around, which the model works, and this is represented in an e-commerce perspective. However, the model works without e-commerce as well. It works in a traditional business model. So what are we looking at? Manufacturers on the left, distributor, that says distributor, and then retailer, and then customer. And what we're looking at here is the cost of a sweater. And the cost of the sweater up here is $50. $48.50. And then we have $40.34, and then we have $20. So imagine the next time you go online to buy something, and most people would be happy to pay the same thing that they pay to buy it in the store. So let's talk about this sweater, for instance. And the sweater costs $48.50 in the store. We don't know what the sweater is, but it's something you want, right? So, or an electronic component or something. It costs $48.50 in the store. You go online, and you'll be happy to pay $46 for it. Woohoo! Or $45 for it. When really you should be paying $20 for it. You should be paying a lot less. Because of this concept called disintermediation. So, which is the way the model works, and I can explain. It's kind of like value chain. It's a model that you apply. Same thing as value chain. So we have a distributor. So let's say we're selling this sweater and we're Target. Does Target sell sweaters? Okay, they do for this model. All right, so, or Walmart. I know Walmart sells clothing, I think, if you can call it that. All right, so you have the manufacturer. Someone made this sweater, probably overseas somewhere. So it gets sent to the U.S. distribution house, which is a Sweaters R Us. Or something, I don't know. We sell to everybody else.com. And then they sold to this retailer, and this retailer was Target. And actually, believe it or not, the distributors these days have they have, what do they call it? Single licenses. Like, what is a Martha Stewart brand? Is that what, Target or Kmart or something? They're branded now. They have. Did they really? Because they had a solo distributed contract. So these are the middlemen. Okay, Martha Stewart is a good brand. I mean, not a good brand. It's a good example for this brand. I'm not endorsing. I don't even know. I don't even know what they make. But for the longest time, Martha Stewart was selling to Kmart. So it's funny that they're selling to Macy's, because I don't see Macy's and Kmart on the same in the same distribution channel. But you got one distributor who's got this product line called Martha Stewart. There's a couple of other ones out there too. These made-up lines. They're distributor lines. And then the distributors get exclusive, is the word I was looking for, exclusive distribution rights to certain stores, and they're usually retail chain stores. Like, you see it in your grocery stores all the time, the value something or other. I think that's Walgreens has the value line or something, and then we got the Martha Stewart line. Anyway, long story short, that's a product of this going on here, where this guy brings it in from all of these miscellaneous manufacturers, and then they stick a price on it. These guys are the ones who are coming up with the price. They sell it to the retailers, some cases a distributed exclusive distribution agreement, sometimes a none, and then you sue over it if it was distributed. Anyway, long story short, only one retailer firm, like all the Targets, all the Walmarts, all the something or other. This is not just one, this is everybody, and this is not just one, this is everybody as well, and we got everybody here. This guy takes a cut from the manufacturer. His job is to get them out to the retailers. The retailers take a cut from the distributor. So if the cost of the sweater was $20 in this particular case, $20 got, from the distributor, now it turned up to $25, $30. So the cost to the consumer is going up. The more channels it goes through, the higher the price to the consumer because of the more increased cost. Everybody in the middle's got a take in it. They all have a percentage. So by the time it gets to the retailer, that cost of that sweater is $48.50. Well, what if I went online and bought it from XYZ company who's buying it directly from the manufacturer, and I'm paying them $48.50 for it? They're making a lot more money on the sale. This is why e-commerce is good for businesses, bad for consumers. Because this is the two extremes. This is going online and the customer buying it from the manufacturer versus customer buying it from Target. And you're paying the same thing for it. Maybe you're paying a little bit less, but then you're paying for shipping. So it's costing you, overall it's costing you about the same thing. You're just giving a part of this money to a shipper. Maybe not. Sometimes you're paying $48 and then you're paying shipping on top of that. Or better yet, you go, and not going to criticize Best Buy, but Best Buy is notorious for this as well. Best Buy, you have prices that are the same online. Target, well, actually, Fry's has the same thing too. Same online, same in the store. if I go to a Best Buy website and I fill up a shopping cart and I'm checking myself out basically, I'm going through the inventory, I'm finding what I want, I'm putting it in here, I'm giving them my credit card information, I'm going through the shopping cart, and then I'm going to go drive over to the store and I'm going to pick it up. That's cheaper for the store than if I walked into that store and I had to have someone wait on me and go out and find it and go out and over to the register. We got the electricity of the store, we got the manpower, the people working in the store, we got the cleaning people who are cleaning up all the ice cream that gets spilled on the floor from the patrons throughout the day. Yeah, and yeah, the bathrooms, the parking lot, all that, but I'm paying the same price. And I'm doing my own customer service, I'm doing my own sales job, so I'm not getting paid. So Best Buy should be paying me to sell the product to me, to go package it up, to find all the right accessories for it, to find all that stuff, but I'm not. Which is kind of funny, and the consumer will get away, the consumer will like it. And because, you know why? I'm going to go drive to the store to pick it up because I don't want to pay for shipping. Because I don't want to pay even more on top of that. So e-commerce is really good for shipping companies, for stores, for everybody, except for the consumer, believe it or not. But the consumer thinks, oh, I'm getting a good deal, I don't have to go to the store. But, you know, it's kind of like, well, now you're accepting the fact that the store's still charging you for the heating and the air conditioning and the cleaning crew and everything that they're originally charging you for when you go into the store, but you're not getting any of that stuff.
Like Southwest.
Like Southwest, actually.
Print your own ticket and everything at home.
Still the same price. Yeah. But you'll pay it because you want to fly. Just the same way as you'll pay it and you'll go drive over to the store and pick it up. Well, they should just give you free shipping, really. So, anyway, the term is called disintermediation. When you take out the intermediate levels, it means more profit to manufacturer. Whoever's making the product is making more money on it eventually. Consumer is paying the same price because you're not going to pay $20 for the same sweater that's $48. The other channels, just because you go online, you'd be lucky to pay the same thing for it. You know, unfortunately, sometimes you pay even more for it online.
What would you call the brands that are like the manufacturer itself is he's a distributor, like the Walmart for Great Value products?
That is re-intermediation, where now you have, that's excellent, because I was leading into it, excellent example. So this is, you take it out, and you have it, there's no replacement for it. There's just no distributor anymore. Instead, the customer's got to go to this website for the manufacturer. Or it maybe it's going through a retailer that's going through the manufacturer, but no distributor. Re-intermediation is when this guy turns into a retailer. Oh, so now I'm a manufacturer and I'm making Good Value brand. And it's coming right from my manufacturing store with this artificial label from this distributor and from this retailer. Now it's coming back sometimes to the retailer, sometimes to the customer as Good Value brand, or and it's usually generic. Okay, so remember originally, if you were in the States about 5-10 years ago, we had generic brand. So generic brand, nobody liked generic. Actually, there was once I saw a car, it was painted yellow with the white words generic, because that's how they did the packaging, because it was coming from manufacturer. So it's called re-intermediation, because we're re-entering the function back into the system, but we're switching the role. So now we have a manufacturer who's now turned into a distributor, and he's distributing generic brand. So initially it was like, paint the whole thing yellow and put cookies, cake, soda. And then they went, oh, consumers don't like generic brand. And the generic brand doesn't sound as good as regular brands. So then we ended up with Martha Stewart brand. And then we ended up with well, actually, Martha Stewart's a distributor brand now. That's a distributed brand. On the manufacturing end, we get Good Value, Price is Right, I don't know, something, and it's usually a whole label system with a whole marketing. So all the products, you buy a thing of Advil, the labeling looks the same as a loaf of bread or something else. It's the same color, same concept, but it's different products coming from different manufacturers, but it's all coming through this distributor system that's not really a wholesale distributor because it's not going out to all these different stores. It's only going out to one. And it's being re-intermediated in through the manufacturer in. So when the product comes off the line, They make products for soap and laundry detergent and hair shampoo and a loaf of bread. You know, and it all has the same label on it. It's all the same brand. And that's called reintermediation. Unfortunately, we don't get very much of that online. We get a little bit of it, but not much. That's why if you go over here and you buy from this manufacturer and you're the customer and you want to return that product, good luck. you're gonna keep it. Actually, what you're gonna do is go on eBay and sell it because you can't return it in most cases. So. Or we have a lot of retailers or a lot of customers actually that go on eBay and pretend to be manufacturers. Yeah. So they sell a lot of product impersonating manufacturers, and they're like, I've never heard of this manufacturer before. Or you get a lot of manufacturers who have limited distribution agreements through distribution people that go online under fake product names. It's from China. It's a cover. Oh, what kind of cover is this? The same one that Kensington makes? Looks like the Kensington cover. It's not the Kensington cover, though. It's another cover. Comes in a brown paper bag. It says cover on it. But you bought it for half the price because it doesn't have the label on it because it somehow fell off the truck. Actually, that's what they used to say when it was in the store. It fell off the truck. I don't know what it falls off now. It got stuck in cyberspace. Business process reengineering versus business improvement. So anyway, that's my whole spiel on disintermediation as well as reintermediation, which is the exact opposite. It's putting the function back, but it's a distributor acting like a retailer, customer acting like a retailer, manufacturer acting like a distributor or a retailer. So now going back to more competitive advantages, here we have this concept of business process reengineering versus business improvement. So we have some examples here where the business improvement, and this is where I was calling it continuous process improvement. That's another term for business improvement to compare and contrast the two. One's incremental, the other one's radical. So business process reengineering is radical. It happens overnight, layoffs going on. Usually with incremental, no layoffs, unless you really have to. So the level of change is incremental versus radical. Process change for the improvement, we have improved new versions of the process. Here we just take out the process and put a brand new one in there, get rid of the current process. We actually did a lot of this with ITU in between the two buildings. We used to be in Sunnyvale. When we left Sunnyvale, came here, total revamp. We did business process reengineering. I think we're almost ready to do it again, actually, from rumor has it. So, yes? Oh. Oh, hold on one second. Let me pause this. Okay, we're back. Slight interruption there. I guess that's what happens when you work here and go to school here at the same time. You get interrupted in the middle of your class. So, all right. So just know that continuous process reimprovement or business improvement, as sometimes categorized, is less drastic. Also know that it's a short. So the business improvement is short term. This one's long term. You don't make drastic changes unless you're looking at long-term issues or long-term growth problems. Typical scope, narrow within functions, broader when you do business process reengineering. So, low moderate risk, which is why people prefer to do CPI, continuous process improvement. Low risk, huge risk. You lay off the wrong people, you end up hiring them back. And they usually charge you more money. They don't come back. If someone's going to lay me off and then turn around 2 weeks later and hire me back, I'm going to ask for more money. Just for my pain and suffering right there. All right, stockless inventory. So another one of the things people have tried to get a competitive advantage is, inventory is expensive, actually. Stores, it's ridiculous. In the old days, believe it or not, stores used to hold stuff year to year. Oh, it's no, like certain products are seasonable. We have Christmas trees, Christmas ornaments, Bugs Bunny, Easter Bunny stuff. We got Valentine's Day stuff. We got summer stuff. Stores, they just take it out of inventory. Okay, take it off the shelf, put it in the back. Okay, it's time again, put it all out. They got the same stuff they're selling every year to year. Not only does it get old, because if you didn't buy it the first year, you're not going to buy it the second year, or the third. But long story short, by the time they actually sell it, they're losing so much money on it, they might as well just give it to you. Just give it away. Because of the cost of the inventory. Because the land value, warehouse space, is much more expensive than the cost of the item. Or what they're going to make off the item when they eventually sell it. So after they figured that out, then they go, okay, get rid of the warehouses, get rid of the inventory. And then we had different strategies that came out of that. The first one that came out of that was this Japanese model, the just-in-time. Everyone's heard of just-in-time. I mean, just order it when you need it, and then you get rid of it. So just-in-time works both ways. You order it when you need it, shows up the same day or the next day, and then you get rid of it when you don't need it. So what does it get rid of it? Overstock.com. If you're looking for a cheap place to buy stuff and you want to participate in this just-in-time theory here, Overstock. They got, thousands of headphones for $1 each, or CD players. It's a distributor, a manufacturer, it's somebody trying to get rid of it and get rid of it now. So they sell it to Overstock and they sell it to... Overstock is kind of funny because they'll buy it for nothing. Sometimes they get free stuff. And then they'll turn it around and sell it to you guys who are going to go online, unless you're participating in this. There's a lot of consumers that figured out, well, why don't I just buy that lot of 2,000 headphones? I'll put them on eBay. Or, so that's what Overstock does. There's a couple of other companies as well that do the same thing. They get rid of dead weight. Get rid of it. And then you get, pennies on the dollar back to the manufacturer or back to whoever's storing. Whoever has the dead weight, you get rid of it. And then it's kind of like, which is funny, you guys don't fit the stereotype because you're all international students, but Americans love to do storage units. And I think that's the exact opposite of Overstock. If I have to put, let's say, for example, I'm moving, and I know it's going to be more than a couple months, oh yeah, okay, so I'll put it in a storage unit. If it goes over a certain amount of time, it's cheaper to get rid of it and buy new. Yeah. Why hold on to it? But Americans do this all the time. They have storage units full of stuff that they keep for years, years on end. I can understand if it's a box of pictures or family heirlooms or something you just cannot get rid of, then you're going to be paying more than the item is worth to store it for several years. Companies were doing this as well. Then companies got smart. No more. We're not storing it anymore. So a lot of consumers are actually doing that. It's hurting the storage market, actually. Because for a while it was growing drastically. Because people lost their houses. The housing market, you lose your house. What are you going to do all this stuff in your house? You're going to move into an apartment. You got to vacate your house in 3 days. What are you going to do? You open up a storage unit. So they were really capitalizing on the crisis of the real estate market. Now that crisis is over with. It's the opposite direction now. It's a seller's market. Real estate's selling for more right now than it's on sale for. So if you're trying to buy a piece of property, it's impossible right now. It's just ridiculous. Well, all the storage units emptied out. And now people are going, well, do we really need the storage unit? So now, actually, just the same way as you have Overstock, you have storage units that are for sale. Because what people do is they just leave it alone. I've already spent $20,000 keeping this couch for like the last 10 years. I don't need it anymore. And then you abandon the storage unit. Someone buys it sight unseen. You buy the storage unit. People do this all the time. Actually, it's a big business around here. You go and you auction them off. Here's one for $5,000. Here's one for $10,000. Here's one for $5. Different prices. You buy the unit sight unseen. You go and take it to a flea market and you sell it. Which is kind of ridiculous because somebody else paid so much money for so many years to store onto that crap. Sometimes there's good stuff in there. Sometimes there's bad stuff in there. But yeah. Anyway, long story short. Companies don't want to do that either. So they don't order it. Or if you don't order it, you order it just in time, you get rid of it, you go to overstock.com. Well, you also have the traditional delivery practice. So this is where things have improved with the internet. Why even take possession of it? If you're Barnes & Noble, you're working with 3-4 different major printers, people that actually make the books. Publishers that buy the books from the manufacturers and make the book. Publishers are getting smart too. They're like, why do we need to store these? Why do these people need to touch this product? You don't. So now we're going from manufacturer to customer, skipping all of the inventory stuff in between. Apple has been doing it for years. You buy a computer online, it's being shipped out of Taiwan or China. It's coming from out of the country, right from the manufacturing company, right to your front door. Not sitting in any Apple store or any warehouse or anything. It's cheaper, much cheaper that way. So the other competitive strategy you have is get rid of all of the middlemen in the supply chain of the inventory system. So inventory is a thing of the past. We have stockless inventories, no inventory. If you can do that as a store, you're in the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, Barnes & Noble decided it's too expensive to order those books to stick them on shelves. And then the shelves get outdated. And then the books get outdated. So it's too much work, too much expense. Get rid of it completely and just stay online where you make most of your money anyway. So just-in-time supply, or what they call it, I call it drop shipping. I have no idea what they call it nowadays. But the old term was drop ship, because you dropped it from the manufacturer over off to the customer. Can you drop this off for me? Like you're not the seller, you're just the person who has it, so you're going to drop it off. So this is where the term drop ship came from. I think there's another word for it, and I can't remember what the word for it is right now. But stockless inventory, so we have bulk storage that just get delivered. So cross-functional processes. Actually, believe it or not, they're doing this with manufacturing now too. So if you're building a product, they'll actually give you the sub-assemblies already built at the factories without even giving you the parts and pieces. They'll just give you the finished product of what it is supposed to be after you put the thing together, or partly together, which is called a sub-assembly. So that would mean, like, for example, a car company not receiving the raw sheet metal. Instead, they have it already cut by the manufacturers, already cutting it for them, and already giving them like 500 doors and 600, frames for this, and all the metal's already coming pre-cut and painted sometimes, or prepped for painting. So it's not just raw sheet metal that's being shipped either. So, which means now the manufacturer's getting into the car manufacturing business. Now they're doing the machining, or they're doing some sort of prep work on that. So, well, you just go to Home Depot. You can see it all the time. You can buy a door that's already primed, that's already cut, and already has hinges on it. You just take the door, you put it over here, and install it, and then you paint it. In the old days, you have to actually buy the wood, buy the door, buy the fittings for it, buy the seals. Just put it together yourself. So now in a company here, we also have this thing called cross-functional processes, whereby we have, as an example, sales that's working with proposals and commitments, finance that's working with credit, checking, delivery, maybe billing, collections, all sorts of different functions that are spanning multiple departments. So what we have then are processes that are communicating. This is one of the things that is definitely helped by ERP systems, is the cross-functional processing that goes on. Because then we can look at the business process, the business functions, and the departments, and make sure that everything is coordinated correctly, and we're using better economies of scale in terms of the processes. When you don't have this, you have duplicate labor. You have a customer service department that's keeping track of customers in a customer database, and then you have the sales department that keeps track of customers in a customer database. And you're like, well, which one of these is going to be the most up to date? And you have two duplicate people, two duplicate functions of putting the same information in the system instead of sharing it between departments. So one of the things that ERP systems did was help integrate and help share data across departments and create cross-functional processes that work. And the system itself keeps it together. Okay, we also have the concept of agility. We got a little talk. We only have about 10 or 15 minutes left if you can hold out. I hear some talking going on. So this class is supposed to go for 2 hours and 45 minutes, by the way. I could remind you of that. All right, if you could just keep it down a little bit. Okay. Usually if I stop talking, everybody else stops talking. Wait a minute, she stopped talking. What's going on? All right, agility. By definition, what do we mean by that? We have, actually this is another one of those overused words. We have agile this, agility that. Everyone's like, what does it mean? Well, ability to change quickly. So the ability of a company to prosper in rapidly changing, continually fragmented global markets of high quality, high performance, customer configured products and services. Just think of Agile as able to change quickly. So we have Agile software development. We have agility when it comes to cross-functional development. We have Agile marketing, Agile sales. You know, the concept essentially is overworked. It's like user-friendly. It's overused constantly. Or yet, we can have an Agile company. Agile company is a company that can make a profit in markets with broad product ranges and short model lifetimes and can produce orders individually and in arbitrary lot sizes. So a good example of Agile companies is Dell Computers. They sell big corporate systems. They lease, they sell, they rent, they configure to order. You have a classroom environment. In fact, if you go to a lot of different schools, you'll find a lot of the classroom environments have all got Dell computers in them, because they do lots of good corporate accounts. So you put the computer systems in, they repair the systems for you. You don't want CD-ROM drives, you don't have that. You don't want USB, you don't have that. You want the internet, you want this, you want that. They build the system to spec, to the customer's requirements. They bring them in, you lease them for a couple of years, they replace them, they put new ones in. So Gateway actually did that for customers for the longest time. You bought a computer, another year down the road, it's outdated. They take it away, they give you a new one. Okay. And then another year they give you another one. And you just they keep upgrading your computer so that you're constantly current. I don't believe they do that anymore, actually. But they had a policy, they had a program that used to do that. Or let's say, for example, you're a small company, you don't have IT support. You know, you can actually get these companies that come in and give you everything. We'll give you cloud services, we'll give you internet access, we'll give you everything you want. Here, you pay a monthly bill, you have it, essentially, which is kind of a custom fit, we sell you what you want type of Agile company. So, Agile. Here's our Dell computer, agility in action. So, as I was mentioning before, I don't know if they're really that far into it, but that's where they've made most of their money and most of their business. When I hear Dell, I always think of corporate accounts. I think of big scale, large scale computer implementations, computer systems, and labs, computer labs, actually. They're not trying to sell to customers. But they're a customer focused company, champion of mass customization, huge labs. The built to order business model. You want computers for your lab? Here you go. This will give you everything. Monitors, mouse, keyboards, everything. 25,000 on a typical day. Tight supply chain management. Rarely more than 2 hours worth of parts inventory. Yeah, if you're going to turn over large scale, you're not going to have inventory. Car manufacturers don't have inventory either. There are no lots sitting out there. Like the old days at the NUMMI, they used to have huge lots where they put all the cars out there before they go. Now they come off the assembly line. Well, NUMMI's not open anymore, but before they close, they come off the assembly line and they immediately get onto a truck. And then they actually get put together half the times at the dealerships. Have you ever seen a truck of cars come in from the dealer? They don't even have, sometimes they don't have glass on the windshields. Sometimes they don't have, everything's covered in plastic. They got to make the car, they got to prep the car after it's delivered for the consumer market. Otherwise, you're not going to buy a car that looks like that. Sometimes they don't have floor mats in them, they're not prepped for selling. They just came off the assembly line. Or they just came off of a boat, a container boat, and they have packages of anti-moisture stuff all over it. Or better yet, they're sprayed down with it so things don't rot in the shipment. So, which is kind of funny. And then, no batteries in the sucker. Barely has tires on it, if it has that. And, no water, no fluid in the engine at all. So, rarely more than 2 hours of inventory parts time. And then we have mass customization. By definition, providing is individualized products while maintaining high volume of production. So that would be like making, as an example here, when Apple decided to make the first Verizon compatible, or what was the other one, Sprint or something? No, AT&T. They started with AT&T, then they went to Verizon. That's mass customization. It's customized for Verizon, and they usually it's the same phone, but they stick a Verizon label on it so the consumer knows this works on the Verizon network, or actually you can unlock it and work on any network, but AT&T network, Verizon, Blackberries do the same thing. I have Blackberries for this network, for that network. They're mass customization. It's the same product, it's just made for different network service. So. Agile competitors, that's hard to compete. When you got a company that can rapidly change, it's hard to compete with that. So you have to have some sort of an advantage to it. From the type of agility, if it's customer oriented, being able to sell to different customer markets, then you've got the role of IT in some examples. eBay as an example. Actually, eBay sells to everybody, works with everybody. They can adapt to almost anything. So, and that's why you can't tell who you're talking to on eBay. So, in terms of partnering, Yahoo is one of them that originally was known for their partnering. Accomplished significant transformations of services for search engines. Interportal, you know, the differences between Yahoo and Google. Yahoo is more of a partnering company. Google is more of a, we'll buy you. We're going to buy you, we're going to own you. So Google owns everything. Yahoo partners as a company. So, which is kind of interesting. Operational, Ingram Micro, yeah. Wholesalers, manufacturers do more of an operational agility. So we can make stuff for you, custom. Make custom PCB boards, make custom metal pieces, fittings, and things that are designed for your products, so they ship it directly. So. Lo and behold, the virtual company, another way of staying competitive. So we've all heard of these. These are the companies that don't exist, and you buy from them on eBay all the time. Actually, they do exist, they're just virtual. So an organization that uses information technology to link people, organizations, assets, and ideas. Well, isn't that PayPal? Can you really... Is there such thing? Well, no, there are. There's big buildings with people that go to work. People go to work at Google too, and they go to work at eBay and all these other companies. So, but they're corporate offices. There's no storefront for that. Are they really a virtual company? Not really. They're a traditional company, but they're working virtually. They're selling their product virtually for the most part. And without, actually, PayPal would not be a success without eBay, actually. PayPal is essentially, well, they're a virtual company. They're not even selling a product. They're selling a service. And that's the interface between the customer and their bank. So they're just sitting on top of the bank, working with the banks. So they're not even a bank for that part. So enterprise information systems. So we have the enterprise. That's the company with all of its suppliers and its companies and its big ERP systems and everything that runs on separate enterprises. And then we have the companies and the systems that link the enterprises together. So that's how the eBay PayPal kind of was an intra-enterprise, and then they became just the same enterprise. But you have that linkage between the different enterprises that gives you, or could give you, partnerships, associations, agreements, different words for it in the past. So information systems that are basically implemented on an extranet among the company, suppliers, contractors, competitors, so everyone's affiliated and there's an alliance. So you form an alliance between all these different enterprises through this system. That's kind of like what the ERP systems are trying to accomplish. It's an alliance / enterprise resource gathering management type of system. Where, you know, like for example, in manufacturing cars, I can tell the guy who's making the sheet metal for me, or the company who's making the sheet metal for me out in Korea or something, or out in another country, I can go into their system and see how they're doing. How many doors and side panels and roofs do they have, and what are they going to send me, and what's the lead time on it, and what are their costs, and stuff like that. So building relationships between the two companies and as an enterprise and being able to share information through the technology, really good. So virtual company strategies, here's a Cisco system with virtual manufacturing alliances, which is actually kind of interesting, creating virtual manufacturing companies. 3 companies were involved in the alliance, provides an agile build-to-order type of environment capable of competitive industries. So this is where you get a lot of the OEM products from, original equipment manufacturers. Microsoft does this all the time, actually. They're not manufacturers, they're software providers, so it's a slightly different context. But Windows is Windows, isn't it? But some Windows says made by or OEM or produced for Apple or not Apple, produced for Dell, produced for HP. You know, and you have your different little breeds. We get this with manufacturing parts too. Actually, a lot of people don't know it, but the boards in the Sony Bios are the same as the 2008 version of the MacBook Pros. But one's a Sony, the other one's an Apple product, but the board itself is this. It comes out of the same manufacturing plant, but it's virtually manufactured for this company and then one for that company. Slightly different changes to it, but it's really the same board, which is kind of interesting. Which is probably why I like Sony's, because the boards are similar. So, higher quality. More expensive, actually. Well, more expensive components. Like the Panasonic CD-ROM drives that were the same, and they switched them out. They had slot load drives in the originals. Same company as I can't remember the other company, but you know, one. If you're gonna make it, if you're a manufacturer gonna make a CD-ROM drive, you're not gonna make it just for one company. You're gonna make it for all companies. So who's gonna buy it? Well, that's an interesting question if you're the manufacturer, and who are you going to sell it to? And then you're going to have competing companies that are all using the same parts and pieces. If two companies are using the identical set of parts and pieces, aren't they making the same product? And if they are making the same product, well, their manufacturing is going to be different, so they're going to have different qualities of products. But how can you be competitive? So some people get this exclusive kind of, no, you're only making drives for me. No, you're only making chips for me, which is kind of interesting. Now we've become more generic. So. But creating alliance for virtual manufacturing companies. Here's a concept here where we have a, you know, you think you have your own special manufacturer, but you don't. But you have a virtual special manufacturer who's logging into your intranet, who's getting all your parts and pieces and things that you need. You can actually use different suppliers with these manufacturers as well. Because, you know, if they're manufacturing a product for you, or they're making a subcomponent for you, and let's say it's a piece of maybe it's the housing for the notebook. There's different people you can buy molding from for the covers. There's different people you can buy the screens from, all the electronic components. So sometimes you can actually get different supplies, same product, different components that go inside of it. And then you have different products, essentially. So. Anyway, here we have an alliance with major suppliers, and the suppliers are working with subcontractors that are working with, you know, the provider for the, let's say, the engineering of the components in this virtual company that's working together. And then we have the boundaries of the firm that, you know, we only make this, we only make that. But you could essentially have like your own computer that comes from different suppliers, from different sub-manufacturers, from different assemblies that all come together. That, you know, who is this company? Nobody's this company. It's just a combination of a bunch of different things we've put together and we've stuck a label on it. Which is actually kind of like what you get in education, if you believe it or not. Because, all right, you're taking this class, right? But you're taking other classes and other subjects and other teachers and other days of the week and stuff like that, right? But what do? They give you a degree. They got stamp master's degree in something. And yours looks the same as everybody else's. But is it the same? You know, you took different classes and stuff, right? But it's like the virtual college, actually. Not really. Actually, now they have it. You can go online and take like Coursera classes and stuff. The MOOCs, massive online open courses or whatever. You can't really get a degree for it, but you can like learn about, I don't know, project management, stuff like that. But that is kind of the same concept. It's a virtual college, but there's no college. You're just taking classes there. UC Berkeley. That's a little better. I put that higher up the totem pole than the MOOCs. But, yeah. Actually, Stanford's doing it now, too. You can take an artificial intelligence class through this open online access system. It's free. What you're getting is recorded lectures, and you're getting, like some of the course materials that are the same, but it's not exactly the same. It's like a virtual version of the same. So, and when you say virtual, I mean, does it really exist? It does exist. You know, just like this company here exists, but what is it really? It's just an alliance between a bunch of other companies. It's kind of like what headhunters do. Are they virtually hiring you? I mean, yeah, kind of. Well, they don't own these people. They don't own the companies that are looking for jobs, but they're lining you up. So, are they really hiring you? No. Well, they might be taking some commission from you, but they didn't hire you. Somebody else hired you. They just made the connection for you. So I'm thinking this is actually a bunch of connections all together. Like the slide is calling them alliances. So alliance, connection, collaboration, coming up with this virtual company that sells a product or a service or something. So, all right. I'm gonna I have a little too much more to say on virtual companies and stuff, so I'll save this for next time. So next week is a holiday. You're supposed to be barbecuing. It's Memorial Day. So if you're American, you're going to your storage unit and you're pulling out your barbecue. Hopefully the barbecue's in the backyard, not in the storage unit. Because you didn't pay the bill in the storage unit, it got repossessed and somebody else bought it. So you're pulling out the barbecue you just bought. And you are going to roast some stuffed chicken, hamburgers. Potato salad. It's a must. Or macaroni salad, if you really want to do the American thing. So, sometimes it involves a pool. If no pool, you got squirt guns with cold water. Hopefully we'll have warm weather. It's supposed to be, Memorial Day is supposed to be like the kickoff for the summer. So we're supposed to have either beach, or poolside barbecue, and water. No work is involved on this day. So. And no school either, which is why I'm bringing this up. No class next Monday either, because I'm going to be barbecuing. Actually, I think I'm going to be on a beach, but we'll see. Haven't quite secured the location for the barbecue yet. So enjoy your barbecue. I will not see you next week. Instead, I'll see you the following week. Okay. If you do have a weekend class, we are having weekend classes on Saturday and Sunday. And I have a weekend class on Saturday and Sunday too.